So then we are back with the modern understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find then a prophet obviously slain by his own people because they did not understand his revelations of the holy prophecies, and they felt they had enough, and they brought him down near the stream, and he was sawn in half. The nation of Israel extremely stupid during the time of Yeshayahu, unfortunately, because during these days we are studying his manuscripts very cautiously, and then receiving many understandings and being very grateful for this faithful prophet during his time, where then we find ourselves studying the time of the restoration period, preparing ourselves for the autumn feast. We find also the world adjusting itself regarding the new trade of the end started by China. So then during this time we find ourselves then understanding this factor, and at the same time understanding the importance of Great Britain. It is absolutely a bloody disgrace what's going on in Great Britain. There is absolutely nothing going on there. There is absolutely no objective, and it's very unheard of for Great Britain then having their government without a firm objective. The world always was led of some sort of objective from Great Britain, and at the moment they don't have any of it. So then some time ago there was a report regarding then FIFA and the World Cup being hosted in Brazil. As they understand, there is already civil war, however camouflaged by then protests, but it is beyond protests because they are breaking, and this means civil unrest or then civil war. When you have a clash of breakage of police and citizens of a country means civil war. So then obviously the main stadium of Brazil, it is very near mountains, and those mountains are replete with scoundrels. Unfortunately they sequester people and they ask for ransom. So there is a lot going on down there in Brazil. They have found lots of petroleum deposits. They are building then these oil rigs. They are involved with the royalties of the oil industry and gas. They are dealing with the Amazon, extremely rich in minerals. So these are taking place at the same time. Documents are not done properly. There are discrepancies. And then because of the World Cup, then the politicians are scandalizing themselves and they are stealing from the people. It is not safe having Brazil hosting then the World Cup in Brazil next year. And since there is absolutely nothing going on in Great Britain, it is absolutely scandalous what the Prime Minister of Great Britain is doing. He is not informing then FIFA of their interest of hosting then the World Cup in Great Britain. He's not doing his job, because he's not evaluating then the situation down in Brazil. He should have taken his time, evaluate what goes on with the FIFA, and then reverse this hosting of the World Cup and do it in England, because they invented the sport. And because of the civil unrest in Brazil, it is a perfect place of having then the World Cup hosted in England, so they can rally behind it and prepare themselves for a new objective until next year. So then the world is so in love with this sport can then focus in what Great Britain then is doing, as it used to be in the past. It is unheard of, speaking of Great Britain, without objective. And as they are aware of, then also Australia has a change of leadership, and then they found the Daimler car, where then Lady Elizabeth had taken a ride many decades ago. and they are working very diligently. They are trying to come up with the money to get the car restored. So then it would be a perfect time of England having then and hosting the World Cup next year. And then from then on, Lady Elizabeth obviously could go then to Australia and ride on a car again with her husband in a town or in a place where then bears her own name. And then afterwards boarding her ship and then inspecting her realms, because as she understands, obviously the Chinese system is already uploaded. It's going to be a worldwide online trade system, and then she must evaluate those realms of hers where then she can make an inventory of those who she wants in her system versus those who she does not want in her system. Because obviously UK has become a subsystem amongst themselves. And then other realms, they won't be very responsible, and more than likely and surely, because of the new investments in the Chinese online trade system, direct trade with China, they are not going to be paying their dues. So they're going to force their subsystem to take care of their own services. It's obvious. And then she has to come up with the money to get her realms then at least serviced with the basics, while they themselves are then investing on their own, but they can't read what they are doing. So it's a very crucial time where then firstly then the World Cup, second then Australia, and thirdly then visiting her realms. It's very important, because the objective in the world must be then re-established. The world has no objective at the moment. The only main, very clear objective is then the BRICS nations, and then the Dragon Mart in Mexico. Mexico has become then the trading post of the Central Americas. Those are being established, and this obviously brings us to this time where this new system is becoming very evident. So then another place is then New Zealand. More than likely they won't become the trading post of the South Pacific. Some time ago, the great Stephen Joyce was working in the project and decided to build then the convention center. But it is truly required a convention center where he should be working in another dragon market, because must copy then what the Mexicans are doing and establishing a trade post in the South Island of New Zealand, so then they can become the trading post of the South Pacific, because it includes tourism at the same time, hotels, include a trading post, and many other parts and people from around the world visiting. And then you find the freighters of the world doing trade with them, a section of it with their own port and so on and so forth. So there are lots of work to do. But then having Great Britain with such a vast history not having an objective at the moment is absolutely bloody unheard of. There's a bloody disgrace. People in Parliament speaking what they don't understand, and then obviously Lady Elizabeth got herself a very nice raise in her paycheck, and then obviously people are going to get angry. But the main question is, why then her Prime Minister is not working with FIFA and then hosting the World Cup in England? The reports of FIFA already mentioned sections of it pondering the security of Brazil for the World Cup next year. There are no solid evidence changes of this time, but then because of the civil unrest and lack of security, would not be then doable and plausible having then the hosting of the World Cup in England, since they are the inventors. So this is what then the Prime Minister should be working on, not on this rubbish that he's doing at the moment. There's absolutely nothing going on in England. And they always were respectful. But then there is not an objective. So the world then can start with a new, fresh moment of the World Cup, visiting then Australia, and then boarding the ship and visiting her realms, giving a new objective of what's coming in the market. And then the decision either Australia or New Zealand becoming then the South Pacific trading post. Because Mr. Swan, he came out of his job. He came up with some sort of lies over there. They tried to cover up their debt. 70 times 12 digits, that's a lot of money. And the existing government is nearly wiped away from the system. They were replaced. So it is truly a time for a new start, as long as we understand Great Britain must have an objective, so then the rest of the world can understand then what is and what it means of being a gentleman and doing trade as per such, how it used to be for centuries, and re-establishing then the standards of trade. And Brazil can make without the World Cup. There is so many resources down there, absolutely unbelievable. Considering then the Amazon and the riches of the Amazon, considering then the petroleum, gas, and then the royalties, and then doing these at the same time, plus the World Cup, and then these politicians that get so excited, overly excited, they begin to steal. So rather than becoming positive, it becomes a scandalous situation. And not only this, then the people, they are in jeopardy of being sequestered. It is very dangerous, the area where the World Cup is at. And they were already talking before that then the infrastructure would not be ready by the time of the World Cup. But mostly because at the moment is not safe. Truly not safe. So maybe Elizabeth should consider her ministers and start leading them, because obviously, it's kind of lacking a bit of information in their agendas.